Hey, this is Dan, lettersfromdan.com. I got the new car, the new camera setup, and I'm here today to talk to you about synchronous versus asynchronous media. Does that make any sense whatsoever? I don't think it probably does. So let's break down what synchronous and asynchronous media are, because this is somewhat important. Alright, synchronous media is media that depends upon time. An example of that would be radio. If you are not listening to radio at this moment, you are not going to hear what is being broadcast. It's dependent upon the time. So, if you put a radio commercial on there, you obviously want to get it during the morning drive, because that's when the most people are listening to it. That's when you hope the most people will hear it, because, you know what I say, hope is not a marketing plan, but seriously, because you know that once your radio ad is gone, no one ever hears it again. It poof, disappears. Now, how does that apply to you? Alright, well, think about social media. There are 2 or 3 sites that are almost entirely dependent upon time. Specifically Pinterest, Twitter, and to some degree, Facebook. So, how are they dependent upon time? They are not asynchronous media, like email. When email arrives in your inbox, it is not dependent that you see it now, because if you log on later, it's still there. But Twitter, for example, unless you write @DanRMorris, I'm not going to see it unless I'm on Twitter at the same time that you're on Twitter. Unless your tweet shows up in my stream, because I am not going to scroll down through the last 3 days of tweets to see what everyone said. That's just typically not what people do. So it is synchronous media, and it requires the element of time. Pinterest. Some people think you have a 10-second window. Some people say you have a 10-minute window. But the fact is, when you log into Pinterest and look at your wall, you will scroll down for however far you can scroll, because it's so interesting, unlike Twitter. You'll just keep scrolling down and down and down until you get to the bottom, and then go back up and refresh or click another button. But if you follow 200 people, you're only going to see however many things they pinned, in the last, hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours. So if you want your image repinned, you need to have some sort of a repinning schedule. Work with your friends, like, hey, I'm going to pin it now, you repin it in an hour, you repin it in 2 hours, and hopefully that will get enough traction that you get more and more people repinning it. But if no one repins it in the first day, it pretty much was never there. Nobody's going to your board just to see what you have. They're looking at their wall. They might make their way to your board, but your board is not their original destination. Facebook is somewhat synchronous in that because people are on there so often, it's still dependent on time to see it in your stream. But Facebook's algorithm has made it so that you see some of the more popular things, some of the things you're interested in, even later in the day, later that day, even later tomorrow, just because Facebook wants it to be less synchronous. It wants to be more asynchronous, more dependent upon your interests, less dependent upon time. So when you're putting together your media schedules, and take a look at the marketingcalendarBlueprint.com to help figure this out, but you gotta know there is a difference between managing synchronous media and managing asynchronous media. There is a huge difference between managing your email marketing and managing your Twitter marketing. So that's today's lesson. Be wary of the difference between synchronous and asynchronous media. This is Dan, lettersfromdan.com, coming to you live from my new car and my new camera setup. Actually, it's not really live. This is YouTube, so it's asynchronous.